let's talk about a specific example of an index, which is the Consumer Price Index. This is one from your reading, and this shows data from 1977 to 2016. And you'll notice on here the reference value is 1982 to 1984. Right, so that's a little bit different. I did some research, and this seems like the base year is chained. Your textbook doesn't go into the math of how exactly that works, but just to keep this to a simple explanation, if you look at these 3 years, if you average those CPI values, you actually will get 100%. Right? So what we're seeing here is actually the base year is considered to be 1982, so it's a little murky down here, but by the time you get up to like 2016, the number 240 means that the index here has increased, or in other words, that the 2016 number is 240% of the 1982 number. So one of the things that we saw before is that you can calculate the inflation rate from year to year. All right, so let's do this for 2007 to 2008. All right, so you'll notice that the increase is a straight 8 percentage points. All right, or just 8 points if you're not thinking of these as percentages. But what we're interested in is the relative change. All right, so the rate of inflation from one year to next is the relative change in the Consumer Price Index. Okay, so we can find the absolute change. We know that's 8, right? But then we need to divide it by the reference value, or the first one. So we want to compare that to 207.3 and see what the relative change has been since that year. All right, so if you'll do that, you'll find that this is about 3.9%. All right, so something that's interesting to do, if you do get an annual raise that's expressed as a percentage, it can be interesting to see how that compares to the inflation rate for the year. And then, of course, there's discussion about whether or not this CPI is accurate or not. But assuming that it is, you can see if your raise is keeping up with inflation or not. One thing that is keeping up with inflation and is actually exceeding it is the cost of college tuition. And you probably are already aware of this fact, but I thought it would be interesting to do an example and look at LBC's tuition and fees and how those have increased over the last few years. And then we can compare that to the national average and see what's going on. And we can do, in one example, we can summarize many of the things that we can do with this Consumer Price Index. Okay, so what we need is data from more current years if we're going to talk about tuition from current years. So I found a website, usinflationcalculator.com, and the CPI data is listed from 1913 to 2019, right? And this is computed monthly, so we have all of these monthly numbers, and then we have averages, annual averages at the end of the year for all of those months. Okay, so you can see at the time this video was made, we're at mid-2019, so we don't have data past that, but we do have annual averages for 2017 and 18, and we also have tuition data for those years as well. All right, so let's take a look at LBC's tuition and fees in 2017 and in the 2018 school year. Okay, so it was $22,580, and then it increased to $25,270. And if we compare that to the national average for private nonprofit four-year colleges, and both of these are undergraduate degrees, you can see that the tuition on average was a little bit higher, $33,840, and then $34,920. Okay, and I pulled that information from the College Board, and LBC's information was from LBC's website. Okay, so if you're like me, a lot of times when you see numbers like this, you kind of know that there's inflation involved. So I would look at this price increase and just think, okay, well that's kind of natural due to inflation. It's not fun, but it's just kind of to be expected. But in this case, we actually can use the CPI to figure out how much of this cost increase is due to inflation, and then if there's anything in addition to that, beyond just the increase due to inflation. All right, so what we need for that are the CPI numbers for those years. So let's find the CPI number for 2018 and then the 2017 number. Okay, we won't even bother with the reference base value since we're just comparing these 2 years. Okay, so in 2018 the number was 251.107. And in 2017 it was 245.120. Okay, so if you divide those, that will tell you how these two compare, right? And you're going to get 1.0244, and then that keeps going. All right, so what that tells us is that the index number for 2018 is 1.02 times the index number for 2017, right? Or it's 102% of the 2017 number, right? Or we can say that it's 2.44% more than the previous year. Okay, so that 2.44%, that's the inflation rate. Right? Okay, so then let's adjust the LBC and average numbers due to inflation, and then see if there's any additional increase beyond that. All right, so what we need to do is switch everything over to 2018 dollars. Okay, so we'll do that for LBC, and we'll put this in terms of 2018 dollars, and then we'll do that for the average as well. Okay, so we've seen a few ways to do this. One is to do a proportion, so we could do the CPI numbers for 2018 and 2017, and then we compare the tuition, so we know the 2017 tuition for LBC, and we want to know what that would be in 2018. Okay, another thing you can do is just take this fraction, or this 1.0244, and multiply that by the tuition that you want to convert, the 2017 one. Okay, and that will give you the amount in 2018 dollars. All right, so doing either of those things, you should get, for the 2017 tuition, that should be $23,131.51. Okay, and that's if you leave this fraction exact. I didn't round in this case, like to 1.0244. I didn't round off or anything like that. And then since we want this in 2018 dollars, we can just leave the second tuition amount. Okay, and then for the average one, doing that same process, so I would just take this fraction and multiply by the 2017 tuition, and in 2018 dollars, that's going to give $34,666.53, and then we'll leave the 2018 number the same. Okay, so these are adjusted for inflation, and what that means is that any increase that's left that we're still seeing is in addition to inflation. So let me make a little more space here, and then we can actually calculate what that is. Okay, so what we're looking for is a relative change. Okay, so for LBC, if you subtract these two amounts, that's going to give you a relative change of $2,138.49. Right, and we want to see what the relative change was from 2017 to 2018, so we're going to divide by the 2017 adjusted tuition. All right, and that's going to give about 9.2% if you convert it to a percentage. All right, so LBC's tuition increased 2.44% due to inflation, and then an additional 9.2% just because. All right, the average private four-year colleges, right, if we do the same thing, calculate the absolute change here. Okay, so their tuition went up on average $253.47, and we want to compare that to the 2017 tuition amount. And that's going to give you 0.0073, right? Or converting to a percent, it's 0.73%. So it's actually not even 1%, it's close to 0.25%, right? So on average, those schools increased 2.44% due to inflation, and then an additional almost 1% just because. Okay, so it doesn't look great for LBC with this increasing cost here, but one thing that can be said in its favor is that the overall cost of tuition for LBC is still below average. And if you wanted to see by how much, we can calculate that as well. Okay, so if you take the LBC's, let's do the 2018 numbers. So if you take LBC's 2018 tuition and then subtract the average 2018 tuition, and you'll see that that's negative $9,650. Okay, and then divide that by the average number since we're comparing, 34,920, and you're going to get negative 27.6%. Right, so LBC is still about 28% below the average cost. So you can make some conjectures about what these numbers are saying. Perhaps you could say that since they are below average, maybe there's sort of a tight ship here, and they're increasing tuition to try to make up the difference here and try to get some of those costs accounted for with the increase in tuition. It would also be interesting to repeat this at the end of 2019 once we have a CPI on average for the whole year, and you can see how tuition increased from 2018 to 2019. You could even do this now with the tuition that's published. You would just have to use one of the monthly CPI amounts. Maybe you pick the August number or something like that, since that's when school's starting. Okay, so keep your eyes out when you see indexes like this in the news or in different articles that you read or books or anything like that. But you should know how to interpret these now, and we've looked at some examples of what you can do with these. You can look at inflation, you can make comparisons from year to year, or even from location to location. So there are different housing indexes that help you compare costs from one area of the country to another area of the country. And typically all of these indexes should have some sort of a reference value, but often we'll refer to an index that just compares different things without any sort of a reference.